Beachcombers? You mean the TV show? That's what comes to mind.
Beachcomber means a simple life. I don't think it'd be easy anymore. It's not socially acceptable.
You mean Relic? The show? Yeah, I know what they are.
I assume since the Fraser is used to transport logs, there's the odd one breaks free, and I'm sure somebody is picking them up.
I see fishing boats, I see houseboats on the river, I see, the larger vessels on the river, and going up to the docks, the Fraser Surrey docks, whatever. That's pretty much all I notice. I don't see people.
There's something sort of therapeutic or calming about water. It's kind of good for your soul somehow. In the story Wind in the Willows, Toad's friends, Rat and Mole, were discussing that, and I think it was Rat that said to Mole, there's nothing half so worth doing as simply messing about in boats.
Any beachcombers on in the New Westminster area? Start or two? We're independent businessmen. I feel that we're doing good. We're picking up wood that would otherwise be wasted. We're looked upon as scavengers. You know, an eagle's a scavenger.
I don't know what the big interest in beachcombing is. I really don't know. It was a way of life to very few people. I went to work in the mills for 8 hours. If I depended on beachcombing, I would have starved to death.
Saw an ad in the newspaper saying, be your own boss. Magic words, words to appeal to a dreamer. And I bought that second-hand boat that was for sale. Went on the north arm of the Fraser River to start doing log salvage. I lived in Alberta all my life and used to watch the Beachcombers TV series, and it appealed to me very strongly. Always did have a kind of a warm, fuzzy feeling for the West Coast. Nothing. I was right, it's boring.
"65 years on the river. And I've lived here all my life. I've gone elsewhere and came back. It's still my favorite place to live. And this is how I got into beachcombing and fishing and logging. And it's not a means to make a living, it's just a spare time job. Boats in this kind of condition are supposed to be put away. Get rid of them, build a new one. I've used it every day for 30 years. And my first boat was about 10 feet long, a rowboat made out of cedar that was hand split. I could row it around and do my firewood pickup. Beachcombing was just the beginning of things then. But after these boats, and the building of boats passed, then we started more commercial beachcombing. It was quite normal to travel all the way to Point Grey and back every day, just to make the trip. Some days you'd make money, some days you'd lose money. That's how it was in the old days.
love being right next to the river and seeing the boat. We can check on the boat to see if there's any problems right from the house. We can look out and see it. We can watch the traffic on the river and see what's happening. And so we've seen breakups right from here when there's bundles and logs and everything drifting down, whole booms drifting down the river. A lot of people complain when they look out, and with these new modern homes, complain about having to look out at industry or something. I don't mind in the least looking at work. I think it's beautiful. My photo album, every time I take a roll of film in to get it developed, half the pictures are of logs. I started really full-time probably around 1985, 1986, in that time, and worked really full-time until just recently, when things went downhill so bad that it wasn't worth going out there any longer.
The log just ahead there, and there's a ship going right along here, departing out of the river. It's right in the shipping lanes, as you can see. We want to pick it up and get it out of there. It is a hazard to navigation. It's a bit harder with the...
Salvage is being more and more discouraged instead of encouraged, and instead of encouraging the cleanup of the wood that's out there. And more controls and more obstacles are put in the way of a salver to salvage wood and market it. I couldn't carry on operating the way things were. But before I would just quit, I would do what I could to fight against it.
I think within all males there's a hunting instinct, whether they admit it or not. Beachcombing is more like hunting, and you just never know what you're going to find when you go out. When men watch us work in a beach, I seem to detect sort of a sense of envy in them, you know, because I presume the vast majority of them have 9-to-5 office jobs, and they feel pretty much regimented and dictated to, and they don't feel that they live a very free life. And I think they have the impression that we are living a life of freedom and kind of roaming at will and doing as we please, and that we don't have to answer to anyone. They have the wrong idea. They have the wrong impression. It's a really tough racket, and it's like anything else. Politics plays a significant role, rears its ugly head, as they say.
Log salvers are a part of the transportation system. They're there to pick up the odd log that gets out of log booms as they come in the river from the ocean. Saltwater and freshwater have different flotation, and sometimes logs are lost just at that interface between the freshwater and the saltwater. And you know, there's things happen, things go bump in the night. There are logs that escape from booms, and a log salver gathers those logs up and returns them to Gulf Log Salvage, who then package them up so that they're back into marketable form. And we market the logs and then split the proceeds between the salvers and the original log owners. We're required to get the highest price we can reasonably be expected to get for the logs, and that's so that you know, that the return from salvage logs is as high as possible.
Okay, today I got 3 big cypress logs. That's yellow cedar. And I would say 2 of them would maybe run around $65 or dollars each, and one of them, the big one, was maybe around $75 or $80, hopefully. Darn. Sorry about that. What would that be? About a little over $200 for the 3 of them. Hopefully. I'm hoping that. But it all depends, you know, how they're scaled and how badly they'll be subject to deductions for flaws and defects. We're making anywhere from a third to, well, less than half of what we used to get when prices were good. Our profit margin is so narrow as to almost be negative. It is a fair enough way to develop ulcers. Beachcombers are, I think they're generally regarded as being second-class citizens. Say like the skippers of large boats, you know, feel that they occupy more prestigious niche than we lowly beachcombers. We're just sort of scavenging and you know, it's not like we're the Prince of Wales or the President of the UN, you know. We're pretty much just common working dudes.
The Canada Shipping Act is by far the largest here. 5 years ago, the log salvers formed an association, WASH. And since then, we've been fighting tirelessly to try to improve the conditions for log salvers, including writing letters, meeting with provincial officials, meeting with the federal officials, trying to get things on a fairer basis for salvers. Certainly now the guys have their membership emblem that they put on their boat, are showing, the majority of them, not all of them, are showing it with pride that they're a member of WASH. In the beginning, there was a number of people that were fearful to even admit that they belonged to the association for fear of repercussions.
I think she's a fly in the ointment, you know, a bit of a gadfly, sure, you know. She gets pretty vocal when she feels that we beachcombers are not being treated fairly, and as is the case right now, our rates are very low, and so, you know, we all feel that we're not getting a fair return for our work and our efforts.
Anyone with $250 and is over the age of 18 can be a beachcomber. And in fact, we have too many beachcombers in the river right now. Part of the reason we hear some dissatisfaction about the amount of money they're able to earn is the fact that there are too many beachcombers around for the available work to be done.
The price structure that's in effect these days, we have to pass by a lot of the wood. We have to be extremely selective and only take logs that are going to be profitable. I know I'm doing an environmentally friendly service, reclaiming lost logs and putting them back into the system and salvaging them so that they can be utilized. If timber is left to go to waste, why, then they will cut more trees down to replace the lost timber.
log salvors look upon themselves as contributing to the betterment of the environment, to helping clean this up. I think they all realize that the wood is doing harm to the environment by washing into places like this. There are some salvors that have participated in cleanup work, volunteered their time and have worked at it. But it's not my thinking that it should be volunteer workers cleaning up after the industry. We feel that industry should be cleaning up the wood that they allow to go astray.
Ah, yeah, sure, perfect. They say rope is an inanimate object, but don't believe them when they tell you that. It'll tie itself in knots. And, okay. I was towing a log. This dog was driven into the log, and the current twisted the boat, and the log slalomed off to one side, and it caught a piling, one of the things that these docks are fastened to. And it popped out of the log, and these things tend to fly like an arrow because the rope is trailing in the ring, so they come point first. And it shot this way and whipped around the cabin. The windshield imploded and the pieces flew and hit me in the chest mostly, which was lucky. And none got me in the eyes. I was wearing sunglasses, which is a good thing, and nothing got me in the throat, so lucky deal.
Fellow in here that would be really interesting for you to talk to if he'd talk to you.
Well, this here is a project that I had started independently a few years ago, which has just progressed along with the trouble that we've encountered in the fishing industry in the past few years. So, but this is a cooperative project with the Department of Fisheries and Oceans right now. We never got to fish here at all. It's the first year in history that the Fraser River has been closed. Well, I met her. As you can see, she's a log salvager out on the river, and one year just met her out here. Got to talking about the bureaucracy that we've got in the log salvage business right now, where the big companies seem to want to have total control of anything that's floating in the river, even if it's a piece of wood this big.
Even though they don't want it back, too. You've found that they don't really want to even purchase this wood from us, and yet they want control over it.
Yeah, you find out that it's they want the wood when it's to their advantage, but when it's to their disadvantage, all of a sudden they don't want the wood, and it's not their wood. Like if I'm out there fishing, I get one of their logs in my net, and it does a lot of damage. All of a sudden, it's nobody's log. But if I was to take that log and bring it home and sell it to somebody without a log salvage license, I'll have the RCMP down here trying to put me in jail because I'm not even allowed to touch it because, according to them, it's property of Gulf Log Salvage, which.
I mean, an owner in Canada is always an owner is an owner is an owner. It goes right back in English common law, way back when, that an owner has the rights in his property, and those rights stay with the property. And if you lose your wallet on the street, it doesn't matter who picks it up or whatever. It's not finders keepers. It's always belongs to you, and you have control under the law over your property.
They consider theft, though, if the log is drifting and you pick it up. Their ownership hasn't ceased, so if you come into possession of it, even if it's adrift, they consider it theft. Look at all the debris washed in here, even. But if they want to own it, they own it. If they don't, they don't.
I mean, there's natural debris, and then there's that ain't natural. Every nice clean cut end come from some mill somewhere, or some logging gut. No mill will buy it because most of it's too short. It's all bashed up short slabs and stuff. But yet there, if you spend a little time, there is good wood in there. If you take a look up at that fence up there, all that wood has been cut out of wood like this. Yeah. But you get a lot of firewood, but I got to cut firewood anyway, so I might as well kill two birds with one stone.
If the system was changed so that all of the drift timber was cleaned up, and salvors were paid a decent price for it, I think that all of the salvors that are working on the river could make a good living of it.
There will always be a need for log salvors. However, if the expectations of some of the log salvers and the log salvage community generally don't sort of come into the reality of the economic situation of the industry that they're working in, then there will likely be a lot fewer log salvers in the future. There will always be some, and there will always be work for some. And I guess the unfortunate thing, as I said before, there's too many. The unfortunate thing is that probably there will always be too many beachcombers to make it a really good economic and viable business in the river. It's probably safe to say that if there's room for 10 guys there for a good living, there will probably be 20 guys.
Nobody takes responsibility for the debris, but they own the wood, only the wood that they want. And the rest of it is left to go to waste. The wood ends up clogging the marshes. It ends up as a hazard to navigation. And nobody's responsible for that wood.
A log that is less than 8 feet long is not long enough to cut in the sawmill, and it's either ground up for chips or discarded. That is how a lot of the waste comes down the river. I caught one this morning, a big one. It's 3 feet round, 7 feet long. And nobody wants it because the mill can't handle it. Now it'll be something on the beach for years, unless somebody cuts it for firewood. Getting pretty dull. Like in my business, I can beachcomb just about anything. I can beachcomb stuff that's been discarded. It's no good for lumber at all, because I have a use for it here. I'll use it for a building or make some shakes or something and utilize it. Beachcombing was not installed to clean the harbor. It was only to salvage the timber for the mills. That's the only reason it was ever formed. You see, if a beachcomber was to clean the harbor, he'd be paid by the harbor, and he'd be obligated to pick up everything for protection to all the other traffic on that harbor. But that isn't the way it is. See, this is beachcombing now when you look up the river. You have to look. If you don't look, it goes right past. When you open your eyes, you'll see a building that was put together, and the storage bin is full. All these articles have come from things that drifted down the river in beachcombing time. The things you pick up when there is no logs. That little boat was only a little white spot on the water when I saw it. It didn't even look like a boat, it was just a white. So I went to see what it was, and then it looked peculiar, so I rolled it over, and I could see it was a little rowboat. And I managed to get something fastened onto it, and I took it to shore and hauled it out. I kept it for the purpose of the children that come here for a rowboat to play with. But the children now have grown up, so there's not so many children. It's a strange set of happenings.
If there weren't any beachcombers course, we wouldn't have any theft. We wouldn't have people doing anything that's illegal. My name is Andy Johnson, and I'm a security manager for the Coast Forest and Lumber Association working out of Vancouver. I spent 20-some years in the RCMP and 6 years in the Canadian Security Intelligence Service, so my background is fairly diverse as far as gathering information for criminal prosecution and or gathering information for intelligence activity. At any given time, we have $50 to $200 million worth of inventory, log inventory in the water. And basically that inventory is spread over a very large area. And what has been referred to in past instances is the largest unlocked warehouse in the world. Because of course there's no doors, there's no locks, our inventory is sitting there, it's a valuable inventory, and people have access to that inventory. This is not the same as an industrial complex where you can lock the doors at night and people can't get in. We're quite different than that, and as a result we have to use different tactics and methods to ensure some semblance of security for our inventory.
Oh yes, there's always been stool pigeons. This is what you call a stool pigeon. It's a man that's out looking at what you caught. He'll even come over and get the marks off it to find out which boom it come out of, and put in his little reports, you see.
One of the other things that is quite valuable to us is solicited and unsolicited information that comes from numerous sources from the river community. The chip scows that are tied up on the river, for instance, you can climb up on those chip scows and hide in the chips and see wonderful things.
You see, when I was a young man and I was beachcombing and I tied the logs up here, somebody from the mill would see the logs and they'd send a man over to come and talk to me about them. And sometimes you're accused of stealing them. They tell you right point blank to your face, hey, you were out and stole those last night. You see, but it was just word of mouth, not something they could prove.
In my opinion, and this is just strictly my opinion, that there's a small percentage of beachcombers who are in fact conducting illegal activities. There's a large percentage of beachcombers who are picking up legitimately escaped logs. If we didn't have any beachcombers, we would then be charged with the responsibility of picking up those logs. It would probably be cheaper if we picked them up ourselves, but in fact, we have a beachcomber community that provides what I consider a valuable service. Those who are acting within the law.
Mike wasn't delivering his logs to Gulf Log. He was collecting them, taking them out of the traffic lanes. He wasn't selling them, he wasn't doing anything with them but storing them. He brought them in and held them. The debris he cut up into firewood. But he brought all this wood in there, stored it, and nobody paid any attention when prices weren't high, when there wasn't any shortage. Suddenly there was a fiber shortage. The forest companies were looking for fiber anywhere they could get it. Mike Carich's wood looked good. There was fiber in there, and any fiber at that time was great. Anything they could get their hands on, they wanted.
Mike had collected a lot of material on the river over the years, and he hadn't delivered it. And it was becoming an annoyance to his neighbors. And this was some years ago now, I think about 3 years ago. The harbor commissioner and I went to Mike and said, Mike, we've got to clean all of this material up here. You're creating too big a mess here, and we're getting complaints about it. So the harbor commissioner took the unmerchantable material. They have the authority to clean up the harbor. We took the rest of the material, or anything that we could recover any money out of it all. And we went up and gathered it all up on our own, hired a contractor to do it, and processed it and sold it and packaged it or whatever. And market was pretty good then. Mike got a really good return out of that. He got quite a sizable chunk of money, but it had been stuff that he had accumulated over quite a number of years.
Mike was quite upset because he had geese down there. They came and wrecked the geese that were laying and the eggs, and he was upset about a lot of things with it happening, and he was upset about how it took place.
I says, I want those eggs back. I said, you take me to the boom. You know where they took it. You take me there right now. So I get out on the boom, And by golly, I find it. Here's this big flat log that's in there, and the eggs are still on it. So I gather it all up on a piece of plywood. So I come back here, and I take these eggs, and I set them on the float alongside of a log. And here comes Mama and Papa Goose right up to those eggs. The next morning, the eggs hatched.
I'm living in the community of Richmond, but I'm not really a city man. I like the backyard here. It's all well treed, kind of almost a rural setting or a country setting here. You know, I chose this place because of the trees. This place is not really a home. You know, it's just a place to sleep and exist. It's not really a life that I have. I don't think you could. It's more of an existence. Well, I almost, you know, I just started moving stuff here. I moved, but I never really finished unpacking, and because at about that time, I guess, I think perhaps that this is getting into an area which I don't really want to discuss at any great length. And when the pleasure boats come roaring by without a care, and they're trying to walk a boomstick, you should hear the beach and the deckhands swear. Take number 16. And when the pleasure boats come roaring by without a care, and they're trying to watch a boomstick, you can hear the deckhands swear. Yes, when the water's lumpy and you're all soaked with spray, it's nice to tie the boat up at the end of a working day. You're not alone, 'cause thousands of other guys have tried pulling logs off the beaches on a falling tide. I used to be an artist in another lifetime, and the reflections on the water, you know, it's like, depending on the light conditions, it has different moods, you know, say even on partly cloudy days, you know, sometimes when the sun is just peeking through the clouds, there are all kinds of subtle shades and reflections in the water, like platinum and silver and a little bit of gold, all the kind of, you know, valuable metals. I graduated from Alberta College of Art with a ceramics major, and I sort of dreamed of having a career in art, and I needed a studio, and when the family started coming along, I got into construction to support the family and stayed in construction for 24 years. But it was slave labor, and I'm out of it now, thank goodness, and pretty happy doing what I'm doing. Worst I've ever done. Full of mistakes from one end to the other. Yeah, I gotta slow the tempo down and try and get on top of things.
majority of the deadheads turn into chips. We do recover some lumber, and if you look around the yard, you can see some of the lumber that we make out of that. Most of the logs that we deal with here are the lowest grade on the coast, and the primary objective for us here is to make chips for our pulp mill. I mean, I don't go out with the Beachcombers and find out why those logs aren't picked up per se, but I know what they're talking about when they say this is like, you know, it's a $1.50 log and it's going to cost me $8 to go and retrieve it and bring it to the mill. It's pretty easy math to figure that out. If there isn't some incentives provided some other way other than what we do, it's not going to happen.
I think we have come up with proposals that would work, that would not only clean up the waterways, but put this material back into the manufacturing process. Any material that we can put back into it that isn't wasted allows for less trees to be cut down somewhere else. What a little place can do and turn that wood into for value added is kind of embarrass some of these big companies when they're taking and turning that good wood into pulp. And here's the pulp log that the other small outfit can turn into even a guitar. There's a lot more value in that than some pulp or a 2x4.
You have to have patience to do this kind of work. This was all discarded years ago. No money in it. Now, rather than let it go completely lost, I hold it up and utilize it for whatever I can. And there we have a bundle. Now it's that tight, so it doesn't fall apart. You can tap it a little. But this is the way you do it when you do it by hand.
I like to take off the cambium layer because it's good to expose the wood. Good functional walking stick. It dried on the stump. It was a dead limb on I think a dead tree. And they tends to be a bit of dry rot. It doesn't have as much structural integrity as, boy, yep, that's not a good piece of maple. I guess I could glue it. Yeah, this one, oh yeah, 12 gauge, this is the brass from a high brass 12 gauge shell. And this, I'm not sure the species of this one. I think this one is alder. I'll call it alder, yeah. All this martial arts stuff is just great.
Forest industry, how do they perceive us? Necessary evil, I guess. I'm sure that they perceive me as a terrible thorn in their side. I'm very troublesome. I'm sure they see me as very, very troublesome. Yeah, I miss being out there. I miss the guys. I miss the whole feeling of being on the river. Very much so. Sometimes I feel quite sad about not having my job anymore. Yeah. And it's not because of the lack of income, it's because of the lack of having the job, having the enjoyment of the thrill of doing it. I'd love to go back and do some log salvage. If there was some system out there that I felt could work, felt was fair. Yeah, I think I would. I know I would. I know I'd be back out there.
This was built as a primary house for my family. Like a first house, I wanted to build another one, better one, but I never did. I'm not very hungry. My children have all grown up now, so I've been left here alone. I felt sorry for cats that were getting killed by the traffic, so I let them live in the house, and now they own the house. I'm only a co-owner now. So I guess this is one of the things in life that you can't see ahead what's going to happen. I have 20 cats and a dog in the place of my family now. You know, I got what they call garbage all around the house. The neighbors don't like it. Move it. With my funds now, I could buy a new home. You know, I could just go buy a brand new home and discard this one. And what am I going to do in a brand new home? Sit there and polish the goddamn floor? Is that what I'm going to do? Or lock the door and then go sit in a restaurant to spend my life? No, it wouldn't work. It wouldn't work. I have to be content just to play here with all my garbage.
I mean, look at the way those branches curve and cross over each other. There's just, you know, such great calligraphy there, such great patterns. And then, well, just a few leaves that are sort of showing color against all the dark gray. Ah, it's great. You know, it's a visual experience, and all those convoluted structures around the trunk and roots, they're really sculptural. Got to be at least 12 feet around. I wasn't hugging it, I was just measuring it. Western hemlock, but it's not as big as that other one. And there's a really great fir. Well, I walk the beaches, and it's sort of like a busman's holiday. I check out the logs and go, say, down the trail in Pacific Spirit Regional Park, down to Wreck Beach, and then walk along the beaches at low tide, around to Spanish Bank. Calling this one hemlock, and it's a good piece, good saw log. You can cut lumber out of that. Now, if only we could get a living wage for the logs we bring in, that would be nice. I guess you could have a life of freedom no matter where you are, even if you're in a jail cell, but you've got to be free in your own mind, and you've got to feel positive about what you're doing. I enjoy what I do. Yeah, I'd like to do it for another 10 years, and then at that time, I think I'll probably feel like saying, well, maybe another 5 years. We'll see how I last. Yeah.